rather long and very, not complicated, but constantly changing relationship with the UO. But tonight, it is my honor and distinct privilege to moderate this panel of three amazing artists. My introductions will be brief, as I want to give as much time to what promises to be a provocative exchange. I encourage everyone to read their full bios in the conference program, and I also encourage everyone to take advantage of the creative process dance-making workshops that each of these people are conducting that will culminate in a performance on Saturday, so register away. So our first panelist is Suga Gamsong, who currently resides in Portland, Oregon, and wears many hats in the large container that can be called artist, educator, activist. A Bharatanatyam artist, she actively teaches and explores the expressiveness of this art form. As a curator and arts administrator, she seeks to empower communities while also supporting individuals to advocate for themselves. Heidi Duckler. Artistry can be found in Los Angeles as Artistic Director of Heidi Duckler Dance, and in Portland through Heidi Duckler Dance Northwest. Yet her commitment to site-specific work is recognized beyond these West Coast boundaries. As a dance artist, educator, Heidi unpacks what might appear at first mundane experiences to become a platform for awareness of the global world we live in. And Barbara Lima, a Brazilian artist dance maker, currently Oregon-based. She's the founding artistic director of Ella Fava Collective. Her work bridges areas across culture, education, and technology, and is a strong advocate for all artists, regardless of gender, age, and ethnicity. She is a vibrant, urban, hip-hop, contemporary performer and dance maker for the stage and for the camera, who continually seeks to dissolve boundaries. So, welcome. So you can tell that we have a really rich possibilities that are going to be coming out here. So the first question, just to let you know the process, we've shared questions back and forth for the past couple of weeks, and I'm going to throw out a question. Each panelist will respond, and then hopefully before we move on to the next question, we'll have some responses and exchanges. Okay? So, here we go. For each of you, an integral aspect of your artistic identity is your commitment to how the arts, and in particular dance, can and should be integral to social advocacy. This happens whether taking shape through artistic artifacts, fostering community engagement, addressing inequities, or advocating for underrepresented, marginalized bodies. This does not take away, however, from your drive, passion, and commitment to dance making. Curiously, dance making often has been historically discussed as the vision of a singular voice. How do you distinguish, overlay, intersect, meld, choose the verb, the two voices of dance making and community activists? How have these voices come to impact your identity as a dancer and a dance maker?
Well, I wrote this one down because, and I thought I would read it, it's the only one I wanted to read, but I didn't want to forget anything because it's a complicated question and a rich layered question, and there's so much to say about it. So I thought I would start with this. So when I was younger, and actually much younger, I think I was one years old, I had spinal meningitis, and thus began my exploration of the brain and spinal cord. The fragility and resilience of the body has been a constant comparison throughout my life. It's no surprise that as a dancer, I've tried every possible movement imaginable to the body. Perhaps this is my own internal test of what I can overcome and to deeply understand the limits a body can endure. After I received my master's degree from UCLA, I wanted to create a dance company that was anywhere except a dance studio. The locations chosen for their cultural, architectural, or historic significance. As a choreographer who has consistently infused non-traditional sites with performance, I believe the strength and distinctiveness of my work depends on a solid foundation of place. Sites are not simply supporting elements in the development of a piece, rather they are catalysts and collaborators within my choreographic process. Their physical forms directly shaping the movement of the dancers who interact with them. While many artists base their sensibilities with a single culture, I am working to reflect a polychronic philosophy, engaging not just multiple cultures and artistic disciplines, but rather an inclusive sense of time and space, so necessary in these times of division and separation. Polychronic thinkers and creative artists both multitask, hearing multiple rhythms, but also acknowledge those who remain monochronic. My multimedia practice brings a wide range of performing arts to often lesser known communities throughout Southern California and throughout Oregon. Collaborating with innovative and beloved artists in the field, my site-specific, culturally impactful works explore current conditions of the world with empathetic, groundbreaking content connecting movement, architecture, and film. As my artistic aspirations mature, I find I am increasingly more interested in interrogating projects that unravel over time. This exploration affects the body, the community, and the way in which a medium changes as it evolves and adapts its life-sustaining process. I created a film, for instance, over the course of a year, throughout the seasons, that harness the felt experience of the body and its relationship to the land. Ramona, an ongoing project since 2017, has included partnerships with the San Gabriel Mission Theater, the Southwest Museum, Los Encinos State Historic Park, the Tuckabian Band of Indians, and several Native scholars and artists that have inspired my thinking and rewriting. These practices not only contemplate ourselves in relation to others, but I am encouraged to create with a less hierarchical and more interspecific worldview. What one leaves behind and how one influences the future of others. This is the idea of a culmination of principles that have resulted from one's practice. Although dance is intuition at work. The opposite, perhaps, of research, where one leaves behind objectivity to test. It is a deep subject of personal truth, and because it lives in our bodies, it is a kind of reckoning that affects how we live in the world. I didn't write anything.
You're smart.
But there's actually this quote that I saved quite a while, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, because I won't find it. And so this is how being able to work with arts and dance has been impacted me and impacted people that have seen my work or the people that I work with.
Excuse me,
Yes.
when you move the mic away, it's hard for us to
Sorry.
hear you. Sorry
All
about
right.
that.
All right, gotcha.
Thank you.
So it says, opinion is really the lowest form of human knowledge. It requires no accountability, no understanding. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world. It requires profound purpose, larger than the self kind of understanding. This quote is by Bill Bullard, and I didn't know who he was, and he was a politician, a Republican politician. So we started right there for me. And I think what's been very impactful for me, especially the past couple of years, not to mention the past 5 years since I decided to move here, was to develop some sort of empathy, or the highest empathy possible that I could have for myself and for other people that surround me and for other people that do not surround me. And the hardest thing for me has been to stand in the middle, especially in a moment where polarities are so aggravated. And standing in the middle has taught me how to not just pay attention on myself, but to pay attention on the other sides of the story. And that always been in my work, in my dance, and it has always been very challenging because sitting in that space, sitting in the middle, is the most uncomfortable, vulnerable, awful feeling that I feel sometimes, because the truth is, every truth is truth. Every truth is the truth. And it is very difficult to have empathy when something bothers you. And that's what art became to me. How can I sit with this information and understand the other side, even if I don't want to have empathy with it? And what comes up for me a lot is rejection. And that's what I work the most with dance and art in general, and that's what impacts me, is if I sit with my vulnerability, if I'm willing to listen to all the sides and stand in the middle, be on top of the wall, I need to be willing to feel rejected. And being rejected has been the most wonderful journey of my life, because that helps me understand, again, all sides of the stories. And once I'm able to do that for myself and be honest with myself, I'm able to sit here and talk in front of you and be vulnerable and be like, I can be rejected by the way I think. I can be rejected by my ideas, the pieces that I create can be rejected, but they're honest and they're truth to my research, to my studies, to my life, to my work, to whatever. So this is what art has been taught me since the very beginning, because I never had the body to do what I wanted to do, and I had to decide, I had to search for something else. So the rejection, to put myself in a position of investigating. I mean, nobody wants to be in a position of someone who don't like you. Like what it feels like to be Trump, what it feels like to be the neighbor, the dog that barks all day, you know what I mean? Like, that's not fun. But when you put yourself in that position, there is a lotus flower that can just flourish and bring so much to the table, not just for you as a human being, but for whatever art and work you want to create. And that's what I've learned, how to be a human being. That's what dance taught me. How can I be a human being in this work? Kind of ish, like that.
Thank you, Barbara and Heidi. Subhashini Ganesan, that's my name. I grew up in Singapore, and I studied Bharatanatyam from the age of 4.5. And by saying I studied, I really did. You go to class, you learn, and by the time you're 8 or 9, your teacher at some point randomly while you're in class says, now go teach that step in front of her to another student. So this idea of learning and dancing and rehearsing for performances, nothing was linear. And so, in a way, much of my creative process is not linear. And also, you know, that thing that Sherry was talking about where, oh, this is, there's this concept that it's one person creating and a lot of us delivering. I didn't even know the words choreographer or artistic director or all the words that you all know really well. I had to learn in my 30s because you're so immersed. Well, I'm lucky with my teacher. We were so constantly immersed in the art that all we did was to serve the art form through our bodies. And our teachers did all they could to help nurture, and hearing Barbara talk about the truth and humanity and the sense of self that was unconsciously being built in us, right? We didn't know what was going on. We didn't have shared agreements and this is what we're going to do in class. We didn't really have a curriculum. I mean, our curriculum kind of is 400 years old, and everybody has their own version of the curriculum, and that itself is kind of confusing, and we'll talk about that in the days to come. So this idea that there is a choreographer who's making work without ever acknowledging the shoulders that this may be one or two or three people stand on, it's still extremely puzzling to me, right? I make work that I was not taught, but what I'm making comes from that learning, which continues to make me learn in different ways. So I never, you know, if you were to be in a super traditional performance recital, the person who comes out to introduce the dancer or dancers will kind of go through a lineage process, right? This teacher who's so-and-so student, who's so-and-so student. So there's this sense of collective choreography that, again, those technical words don't exist, and I think that's what's joyous about the last 20 years, that we've had more South Asian dance practitioners entering the dominant culture's way of understanding art. So things like the BFAs and the MFAs and getting a PhD in dance theory and history. It's really great that some of these folks have been doing it. Come on in, don't just stand there. Come through, it's good. I mean, we're all dancers, so you can hear and walk at the same time. Come on. Okay. So we're in a space, especially for Bharatanatyam, where we're starting to find scholarly material. We're starting to be able to say, hey, Hari Krishnan, who's in Canada, and Wesleyan, and the slew of professors of our dance form who are now supporting the practitioners and our voices and our thinking. So again, it's collective. And then if you bring it down to social justice, I was excited to hear the term because I didn't know. I didn't know a term, but I feel like every time I got on stage at any age of my life, I was an activist, and I still am an activist. My body is political. It doesn't matter if it was in Singapore, where it's mostly Chinese folks who would judge the Indian body, or I'm here and you've got American folks who judge me as a Bharatanatyam dancer. Oh, you're a culture bearer, and you're not making anything contemporary. You're just following the rules of what happened years ago. Nobody asks me questions, right? So for me, it's just being on stage and doing what I do is political, and it is finding justice for the bodies that are not seen, and it is at the same time, because I have this ability to connect with all of you. I also feel like I'm responsible for finding better words and for better methods to connect with all of you so that you see that art is within culture. There is no art without culture. But it's only when we look at another culture's art and we only bring our values, our cultural values, to view that art where understanding doesn't happen. So how do we develop this ability? Again, empathy is one way, and how do we access empathy to think and understand that, oh, I'm using my values all the time to look at something that is not from my culture. How do we learn to do that, and how do we learn to do that together? I don't do it really well either, but I constantly seek to learn. So you're in learning environments right now. Don't forget that when you leave that environment, you don't have all the answers. Your choreographers and your artistic directors and the companies that you get into also don't have all the answers. How do we keep mining for answers, but how do we do it respectfully? And how do we do it with love, right? How does the heart always remain within our learning space? Because we are dancers. Our heartbeat is what gets us going. That's how our fingers feel, right? So, yeah.
I love what you're saying, and I love, it goes back to the vulnerability that Barbara's talking about. And I have a quote too that I think ties into that. Zelensky, right? A Russian-speaking Jew has a vision of a multi-ethnic, multilingual, transnational country worth fighting for, and he makes the argument that history is not something that happened centuries ago, but happens in a single lifetime. And it's like your home, your body is the container of your memories. And when someone tries to destroy it or suffocate you, you will defend and resist them. And here's what Zelensky says about that idea. He says, this is a quote from him, "Strong doesn't mean big. Strong means supporting human rights and freedom."
Thank you. So I heard words like authenticity, empathy, vulnerability. I also heard about moving forward, right? That we acknowledge our past, we respect our past, but how do we move forward? How do we make change? And I think that's what's so exciting about what Shannon and all of ACDA is doing here, that we're breaking the paradigm. We're asking us to look at something a little bit different, right? So that we're not just looking at the steps. We're trying to understand, and we're trying to support and engage so that we all keep learning, which I think is pretty exciting. It also, especially what Suba was talking about, it's made what all the panelists were talking about, it's making me recognize all that's happened in the past 2 years. Right? I mean, there are still people wearing masks, I get it, I own that. When I'm not talking, there's a war going on, and so there's a lot of reckoning going on, and that sort of leads me to the next question, which I need my smart glasses for. So today the field of dance, as I alluded to, is in a palpable state of reckoning, confronting inequities surrounding issues such as who gets to be on stage, what gets to be on stage, who has access to dance classes, what is or is not being taught has led to small incremental changes in our field. Higher ed dance programs are asking these questions, and thankfully, much more. And these are all in response to real-life concerns that you, the students, are continually encountering. So for the panelists, meeting your identities as dance educators, artists, activists, how do each of you see the field of dance going? And in particular, how do you envision the future of dance in higher education as we keep moving forward into the 21st century?
Okay.
I don't know if I'll have answers, but I'll have a whole bunch of more questions. So, the first question that I really have is the term, the field of dance, right? What is the field of dance? That itself is a privileged concept, and also who defines what the field of dance is? What is included in the field of dance? So when I hear, I completely understand this reckoning that is occurring, but I want us to really unpack what this field of dance is and who is dealing with the reckoning, right? The Black folks, the Indigenous folks, the Asian folks, the Latinx folks, all the other people of color folks, LGBTQ, disability, all the folks that we call underrepresented, marginalized, like all these terms, all these, again, the field of, right? We keep building boxes to talk about, and here we're talking about the box called the field of dance, and it's undergoing reckoning. While so many of I think, dance practitioners, dance performers, have been working and dealing with this reckoning way before COVID or George Floyd or climate change or all the things that made many people wake up, which is great. And so my questions are, when we talk about the reckoning, are we going to stop talking about the reckoning now that we are re-entering the new normal, or when we re-enter the next phase? What does it mean to each of you when you think of the field of dance? What are you doing to open yourselves up, your hearts and your minds, and your understanding and your learning and your own vulnerabilities, right? To not close that lens, to not look at an art form that you don't do or you don't know and say, oh, that's just so-and-so's tradition. It might be so-and-so's tradition, but why is it just? So what does reckoning mean? This is the kind of work that I tend to do a lot. Is what folks forget is individual artists, individual dance creators, choreographers, those who go from project to project. You get excited, you make work, you find people to dance with you, you find a way to opening night, 3 days, and then you have to dissolve and then find another group of people when you're inspired, right? You individual artists. We too are a community of folks who don't have privilege, right? We don't get W-2s, we don't get retirement, we're dealing with contract dollars, and if you're students and you're not sure what all these terms mean, oh my God, talk to your professors. You better figure this out before you graduate. Will you get Social Security? Could you ever afford to own your own home? So we, as individual artists, should be part of this reckoning. Are we really part of the field of dance, or are we just serving the folks who are up there making work, or curating work, or building festivals? These are the kind of questions I'm thinking about. These are the questions that I want you all to think about. These are the questions that we should be asking. We can have conversations about how to dismantle the nonprofit industrialized system. We can talk about undoing the structures that exist right now, the institutions. But the people who are going to do it are us, the ones who I think are making individual work all the time, taking it from project to project. Because you know what? Those who have organizations, have W-2s, they're going to figure out how to pay themselves, and they're going to pay the folks who run the organization first, not the artists. That is one of the things that came really clear during COVID, right? We, artists, were getting cut from pays, but the executive directors and the artistic directors and the development directors and all the people who keep the organization going. Now, let's remember, we are the mission of these organizations. So, the field of dance, reckoning, we all need to be talking about it.
And as we come out of this pandemic, and there should be a lot of, a greater awareness of a lot of things. As we look at those little circles that we see, on the floor in front of us all day long, 6 feet, stay 6 feet away, 6 feet away. Well, we should have a new spatial awareness of each other, of the spaces where, that we are revisiting, of the spaces that, that we're making room for each other. We should have all kinds of new awarenesses and consciousness of our neighbors, of ourselves. I think it's just a constant, we're coming out, we should have awareness of our senses, our sense of touch. We haven't been able to touch each other or hug each other or smell each other. All of those reawakenings of how we feel, so that we have something to consider about humanity in a new way. I think that these are things that shouldn't go back the same way they were. And I think as we consider ourselves and others, we really need to think about our audiences, right? We've been in our rooms locked up, and no one's been able to come and see our shows or watch us, or we've been just watching ourselves on Zoom for so long that we need to think about, about our audience and who are they, and what are they thinking, and what about the other? And who is the other? I think in all of that, what Suba's saying is thinking about who is the other. And that's a really big question that I think that we need to all think a lot more about.
This one. Are you familiar with favelas? Do you know what favela is? So favela is a self-made community. And I'm from Brazil, I'm from Rio, and we have the biggest favela of Latin America called ACDA. And I would advise you to check into it. And they usually in Brazil, and specifically in Rio, they usually are built on the hills. So you just look up and you see like all those houses built on top of each other with barely no space to walk through, nothing. So pretty much self-made, self-built. So there's no health, there's a lot of things that you can think about it. So the reason I'm saying this, having that in mind, and there's a lot of crime in it. There's a lot of crime everywhere, but 12 years, 15 years ago, I had a conversation about all this that we were talking about today. Inequalities, what can we do, how can we make it happen, make it work. And I was talking with this friend that lived in Rocinha. And we were talking about, and then he stopped me, and he was like, I think we should stop trying to convince the people to go down to get the education that they think they need. And we need to start to bring those organizations up to see what are our needs before we are offered anything. And that really changed the whole perspective for me, because we can all see what's going on. We can all see it's right up in our faces. It didn't happen 2 years ago. It didn't happen 10 years ago. It didn't happen 20 years ago. it's been going on one way or another. And I think I mentioned this in another conversation that I had, in another panel that I had last year. And the thing for me is that we can come up with all sorts of questions, and we can come up with all sorts of, we can get the grant, we can get the offerings, we can get the ideas, but if we don't know the necessity of who we want to offer, then we're not doing much, because we need to know what is needed. And I'm speaking from my experience. I've never been to college here, never been to school here. I've been in Brazil, so it has its differences, cultural differences. But if you can't provide the minimum, and even like talking about university in itself, you know, we're here as dancers learning the art of dance, but there's so much that comes behind, in front, on side, and on top and below about this. Social security, and I'm part of a documentary about my life that just got sold to Netflix. They're making millions of dollars and I'm not getting anything. So this is what I'm talking about, what we need to know for ourselves and for the others. So you don't get on the trap of, because this is what you love and you're passionate, but this is also your career. And you need to know what you're doing for yourself so you can know what to do for the other two. And to know what to do for the other is not just like, I'm gonna do something. No, it's to shut up and listen. Because if another experience that I had was working for the public schools here in Portland, and I shared with them. And I had a whole group of kids, 20, 30. I was the only teacher. And there are all sorts of ethnicities. And it was so interesting to read the room and see and figure out how to reach each one of them. Because some kids wouldn't talk with me because I was a woman. Some kids would talk to me all the time and be by my side because I was Latina. So like all kinds of things, and trying to figure it out how to read a room. And I consider myself like a field artist. So like I might not be the one that it's one day is going to be sitting on a table signing papers. Maybe I will. But I would be someone that is going to be up in the hill trying to bring something to those kids that 80%, 90%, 95% never going to be have the opportunity to go to college, but they will know what's going on. They will know what's up, and they will have that seed planted, and they will eventually, maybe, hopefully, try to figure it out and implant that somewhere else. So I think I don't have an answer I wish I had. This question is one of the questions that makes me so nervous because it's so stinky. But for me is like, don't sit on your desk with your butt in your chair and just think about possibilities. Go out and try and make a mistake and be vulnerable again. And I don't know, whatever, because you gotta go up that hill and ask questions, because it's nice to offer with an open heart, but you need to know who you offering to, what you're offering to, because if they don't have basic needs answered, you can offer this university, but if a kid can pay for his bus and he's getting beat at home, and you know what I mean? Like there's so many layers. So activism in dance, and I think dance is like, it can be a very difficult discipline to understand. So to reach those people goes beyond just like the box that we're sitting here. It's the whole thing. It's the holistic vision of what is necessary to, to have a good life and the basic needs, and yeah.
Great answer. I think that as a person who has had a very rich career in higher education, what I'm seeing right now is the way higher ed and dance in higher ed keeps stretching, right? So if you use that word, the field, that keeps getting broader and broader and broader. And so to build on what all these panelists are saying, because here you are all in higher ed, And when I ask, or when I think about for myself how I envision the future, I don't really have an exact answer. I have lots of hopes, and I have lots of possibilities, but I would also like to think that I can act on something, that I can try something. So I think that's what's exciting about all of you here, right, is that you're engaging with each other, and I'm sure that everyone's program is different, right? And each program has its strengths, and each program, you can't do everything in one program. So I think it's exciting that that's part of the future as well, right? So how can the uniqueness of what you're studying, how can that expand your understanding, not just of dance as an art form, of dance as part of humanity, right? So, and I think that's what's exciting, what's happening right now in our world, and I'm proud of us, so yay you. The last question I have is a little bit practical, but knowing these ladies, I think it won't be practical at all. This is to help you understand what's happening with your creative art making workshops. And these workshops are going to be reflecting your praxis as a working professional creative dance maker. They also reflect what some might refer to, and Suba has referred to this quite often, as outside the Western concert dance paradigm. I mean, notice that I didn't introduce anyone as a modern dancer, as a ballet dancer, right? We're dancers. And so the workshops kind of provide participants opportunities to be involved in this process of art making and performing. And I'm hoping that you can speak a little bit to how these workshops not only will unfold, but how you see them informing and questioning and reflecting on how you're seeing dance today. And
I think I might be just repeating myself. But the way I work, the girls that I work with in Portland, with Ella Fala, they have this, my motto is, we'll figure it out. And for everything we do, I would say, we'll figure it out, because, sometimes I would come super clear, sometimes I had no idea what I was doing, and this is as older as I get, and I'm still pretty young, but as older as I get, I'm less and less embarrassed to say that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I hope it keeps going like that, because I remember I was like being 20 years old, and people asking me questions and I didn't know how to answer, and I don't know, I think I would make things up. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing because I didn't want to not know the answer if I was teaching something. And what I've been learning more and more and feeling more comfortable is that, I want to try this out, and maybe we're going to spend 4 hours trying this, and it's not going to work, and I guess it's okay, because we're going to figure it out. And because that's what life is for me, we're just going to figure it out, I wish we came with a manual for life and understand how to, deal with ourselves and community, and I'm not even going to go in community because that's a whole subject, with animals and nature and Mother Earth and space and whatever. But we didn't, so we're figuring out, right? We're figuring out, and there's nothing, what never walks into my space, and I'm not saying I never did, but I don't allow it anymore, is to lies to walk inside the space of work. Because we as human beings and as people with relationships, I think we learned eventually we're different with everybody. I'm a person here. I'm a completely different person with my husband, with my friends in Brazil, with my mom. And we have those layers of personality. And I think when we go to a space of work to dance, that's the moment when we need to drop those off and be willing to, you know, be not know what the hell are we doing, because that's when the beauty of dance and art happens. When we don't know what we're doing, we allow ourselves to just let the universe happen, let the body happen, because our minds take control 24/7 over and over again. And us as dancers, sometimes I think we forget to think through our bodies. And this is what usually my classes and the creative process go, just like let the body think. And that's uncomfortable because we want to be rational. We want to do the math. We want to do 2 + 2 is what? And when we do that, I think it brings up a lot of the things that I spoke already in this panel. Is like fear, vulnerability, is this ugly, is this, is this that? And, you know, I think what I try to do in my work is to just erase the concepts. To just let your body, talk, man. Just, you know, like your body is smart, it's intelligent. Let it go. You know. So that answer means that I have no idea what we're doing. So, but that doesn't mean that we're not gonna find something, because the willingness, and this is something, sorry, I'm gonna stop, but this is something that I miss a lot. And again, I'm talking now from my perspective of being from Brazil. And when I work here, I see a lot of passiveness. I miss the, you know, the like, oh yeah, you know, like, let's do this, do what, I don't know what we do, you know, I miss this, because I think this dance is like visceral. I think this does not need, I'm talking about the act of dancing, not the dance as a career that requires so many things. But the act of dancing doesn't require much of your brain. It just like, it needs the combination of brain, body, everything. And yeah, I think now I'm just repeating myself, but this is what I do, you know, like it's honest. If it's not honest, I don't do it. Even if it's sitting here, talking in circles over and over again, this is honest for me because I'm trying to investigate and understand as I speak and make myself understood. This is honest. And if I was here, if I had memorized something because I wanted to look good, if I wanted to say something that everybody agrees, that would kill me. I'd rather be rejected and show something ugly, but touch me deeply and touch everybody that I work with deeply, even if it's like sitting for 5 minutes in silence for 10, 15, than doing like pirouettes and legs that I you know, like that I don't know where they're coming from. So, who knows?
Barbara and I work together a lot, and we have very similar, I think, ways of working, and that's why we get along so well. And I guess, you know, my workshop would be very similar in that regard, because that's how I work in terms of it's not goal-oriented, it's not, you know, so many, you know, at least, yeah, so much of dance is learned through imitation, and, you know, and that's one way of learning, I suppose, but, you know, I've always tried to, you know, working with different kinds of, it always comes back to the body, and working with different kinds of bodies and different kinds of, you know, we all have different experiences, we're all definitely different people, and to access who you are and how you feel, and to be conscious of that, and not mind conscious necessarily, but, you know, just viscerally, and to find that sort of authenticity and honesty and sincerity in it's actually really difficult to do. You know, we wear so many masks, not just the kind that we're wearing today, but so many masks that we wear internally, and and to let those, release them, and it's not easy for us. So I do try and teach some tools to help along the way, like to develop our ways of noticing what's around us. I call it active noticing, just to be, expand our awareness and our consciousness, and breathing, using breath, and space and time, and all those sort of things that are important as dancers and as people. To make work that we feel comes from our heart, and that has a reason, not a rational reason, but a reason for passion and inspiration, and a reason that maybe we can't. Dance is a language. Maybe we can't, talk about it any other way but through our body, and that's what we want to ultimately do with dance. Is to speak with the body. So that's what hopefully a workshop gives you some way of accessing that, some way of looking at that, and an opportunity to experiment with that, with yourself and with others, and to find some new avenues. And that's all, really. To take a little bit of time out of your routine, because I think when you're in school you have so many goals and purposes and things that you have to be accountable for. But in a workshop like this, you don't really have to be accountable. You just can make time for your own and find something that you're curious about, that you didn't know, that you might have been, and to be able to explore that in a new way. So I think that's enough said.
So, when I'm thinking about my creative process, much of it is not in English. So let me give you some of the things that I've been working with for years, and that I'm really hoping that whoever can join me would be curious enough and willing to explore. And almost everything I do is rooted in relationship. So is it relationship between me and those who taught me and my teachers? Is it relationship between me and the space that I'm in? So relationship is important, and therefore there's a lot of work that I do around the heart. And the Sanskrit word for heart is hridaya. And the hridaya, you've got two things going on in your heart, right? Your heart's considered to be the space where you feel emotions. The essence of your emotions are there. And then, but your heart's also beating. There's a rhythm there. There's this sort of undying, unending metronome that is in you, and really at the end of the day, you're not alone because it's there with you all the time. So that would be the words around hridaya tala. Tala, which is would be considered rhythm, but it's not just your heartbeat, right? Like you can say it's just the heartbeat, but it's also the percussion of your being, of your movement, of who you are. So those would be the concepts that I'd be playing with. And when you put it all together, then there's the sa in front of it, sa hridaya. Heart, in, like being in, sa, you're that of your heart. So if you're thinking about hridaya, your heart, hridaya tala, your percussion in the heart, and then this idea of how are you with it? How are you it? And then we'll but what does it do in your body? You'll probably have to learn some vocabulary that you might not know, which I think will be fun. We'll put it together, and really, I don't know how many of you are even minorly familiar with what Bharatanatyam's concepts are, but there's a concept of rasa, If you nod, anyone nodding? Oh, yay, I see some nods. So rasa is the essence of your emotions, right? So it's not just like I'm in fear. What is the part of your body that allows you to feel it, the essence of it? We all have the essence of all these feelings. We, as humans, have a choice to tap into it or not into it. So really being able to mine into the essence, the rasa of our existence, that then connects to your heart, your hridaya, and then it builds relationship, whether it's between you and a fellow dancer, whether it's you and yourself inside, or whether it's you and your audiences, right? Everyone talks about the fourth wall, and I'm like, but you're not a wall, you're people. So I'm dancing, and I'm dancing with you, and what we create that's in the middle, this aisle, is the performance. So, I mean, yes, that is sort of the system that I come from, but I want to play with that. I play with that in my work. I play with that with my dancers and my company members, and join me if you'd like to. But here's the other thing. I will say Shannon, and we all have been discussing this one thing, which is here you are being invited into a creative process, each of our creative processes, right? And then we're gonna put on a performance. So, summative, you know, if you think about formative and summative, we're not helping you see our creative process only, we're also putting you through a task of, and then perform what you've experienced, right? So we're having this conversation, and we might change what that eventual gathering looks like, right? So I'm just speaking for all of us to say that we see that, we plan this, we see that, and how do we develop the plan to work out is something that we're trying to figure out. So don't come into our things thinking, oh crap, we're performing this. So no, we're gonna figure out what this gathering will look like. That culminating gathering, what that means to both honor the idea of you all receiving our creative processes and we all creating together. I hope I represented
Yes,
this.
you do.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, panelists, for a very rich discussion. And I hope you will keep in conversation with them during the next 3-4 days. And thank you all for coming, and have a great conference.